Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. I'm Joe Martucci. She's Palma Shiles. Dan Skeldon might join us during the broadcast. We're trying to figure out where he is. He's probably busy doing Dan things. Dan is quite a busy person, you know, between the kids, and he works at WFMZ, and he does Tidal Flooding Talk, and he's a firefighter, and he helps out a longtime friend with things. Palma, I don't know how he has the time. I guess people sleep every once in a while, right?
Yep. Many hats. They say, I'll sleep when I'm dead or whatever, but
that is right. I feel like as I've gotten older, I feel like I've leaned more into that. But I feel like when you have kids, that's really when you lean into that. Would that make sense?
Yep, it's kind of involuntary.
Involuntary. Yeah, there you go. Involuntary. Awesome. All right. So for this week's Tidal Flooding Talk, we like to always highlight our member communities that we have. We're over 40 communities strong at the Jersey Shore. One of our newer members is the borough of Highlands, and we'll have them talk all about Highlands and the wonderful things there. They're in Monmouth County. That's the northern part of the Jersey Shore on the bay here, and they are a community that is I don't want to say attempting, they will do it, but get into the Community Rating System program, which is a FEMA program that gives you discounts on your national flood insurance policy premium. So we are going to bring them back on in here to our Tidal Flooding Talk, and for their debut on Tidal Flooding Talk, we have Mayor Carolyn Broullon and we have Kathy Shaw. Thank you both so much for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Yes.
All right. So Mayor, I know you've been on podcasts before. Kathy, is this your podcast debut?
No.
Okay. You've been on many before. Awesome. All right. So let's start off with this. Generally, tell people about Highlands. What is Highlands like? What brought you to Highlands? And what's your favorite thing about it?
Wow. Loaded questions.
I know. I start off hard.
I came to Highlands back in 2002. Looking for a vacation home, and it didn't take me long to jettison my apartment in Manhattan and live here full time. There are so many things to love about Highlands, I can't even enumerate them, nor would I be able to pick only one thing, but I think the thing that stands out so much is that we have both the water and we have the mountains and everything you can possibly imagine in between. We have a vibrant business community. Our residents are wonderful. The schools are great. We have many reasons to celebrate throughout the year, which we celebrate many things.
You do?
Like the recent St. Patrick's Day parade. But there's always something going on, whether it's with our recreation department or with the business community or with the schools. There's always something happening here.
Great. Highlands, for people who aren't, super aware of it, she is right. I mean, they are, how many feet up is it? Is it 200 feet, 300 feet high? And it's just a beautiful view, sweeping view of Sandy Hook. You can see the town, of course. You can see Manhattan on a clear, on a clear day, even maybe not even on a clear day. You're that close, but you do have that Jersey Shore vibe there. So,
exactly. And we're only 35 minutes away from Manhattan by ferry.
That's very true. The Sea Streak ferry, if I'm correct, right?
That is correct.
Awesome. Okay. And Kathy, tell us about your relationship with Highlands.
Well, my relationship, I've recently come back to Highlands in late 2023 for a CRS mission, and having actually worked in it 30 years ago in this same town, I was back trying to put my hand at the new regulations and the new rules. So Highlands is a familiar place to me. I was involved with many revitalization programs here 30 years ago. The first grant to elevate homes in the state of New Jersey, I wrote it, administered it with the DEP and OEM, which was a controversial thing in the 90s to do that. And from there, Highlands kind of has transcended in a lot of directions, including some redevelopment areas, which are some really great tools to use with, floodplain management.
Got it. Got it. Very good. And you're transitioning right into our topic here, which is about, your process into the community rating system here. You said you started in 2013, or excuse me, I'm sorry, 2023, Kathy, generally, and we'll dive into more details, but, what does like an average week look like, getting the town, ready, for this program and the savings that it does bring? What's like maybe that day to day like?
Well, I have to say that having gotten CRS status for Highlands 30 years ago, I knew the rules had changed. So the very first thing that I did, before I accepted the position in Highlands was to meet with Monmouth County, knowing that they had an aggressive program for CRS and floodplain management. I'm retired from Middlesex County, so I had some knowledge of the difference between the two counties as far as that function goes. And I found out about the Forerunner floodplain platform software, and I was intrigued because it is quite a handful to manage and to keep track of in order for a town to actually get certified. So I was excited about that. So that was kind of my first entree, is working with Monmouth County and, Joe Barris and Bridget Neary.
Yeah, and Joe and Bridget are friends of the New Jersey Coastal Coalition as well. I'll let you go, Palm. I've been talking too much at this point.
Well, when you're just starting to get back into CRS, what departments are you really working with initially? Like, how do you get started with that community?
Well, first of all, Highlands adopted the model ordinance, DEP ordinance, in 2022. So they had not developed a floodplain development permit process. They had kind of an informal one, but according to FEMA Region 2, who had met with the mayor and myself and the borough administrator, we really needed to formalize a process to manage all of the improvements that happen in the town. And they actually affect really every department in a municipality one way or another. You can't say it just has, one trend line of what you focus on. But using the Forerunner software package, which I'm happy to say the mayor, the governing body, and the administrator saw early on that Highlands, with its repetitive loss status that we got from Region 2, had a big challenge, and that we needed to use the most dynamic tools possible. I have to say, just to anybody doing CRS, 30 years ago when I did it, I was the spreadsheet queen. I had spreadsheets for days. You've got to be on top of it to keep it together. Just to see that there's a platform, that you can pull reports from, it was like night and day. And so we were all very, very enthused, and that's really been our onset of starting this development process, securing a floodplain administrator, which is Stephen Winters. He is the construction official and the floodplain administrator, and together we crafted an entire permitting process, pages of educational information on the website. All of it is CRS point driven and relevant, and makes sense just in the scheme of things, because you're never going to have resiliency if people don't understand why. All they look at it as a rule. They need to understand the who, what, whys that go with it.
Hey, Kathy, let me ask you this question, and real quick, we'll cut the break. When you were here doing CRS with Highlands, back then, what kind of discounts were the residents and the homeowners getting?
I believe that at the time, I think Highlands had a 15% discount. It was not maintained. There was a lot of changes. Sandy happened. The town went through a mega stress period with not even having a municipal building, having a trailer for, I think, over 11 years. Yep. And so records were destroyed. It was kind of starting from ground zero in, many, many ways. But, it's we have a lot of commercial buildings here, restaurants, marinas. If they're having to get flood insurance, it's ridiculously, exorbitantly expensive. So anything we could do, holistically for the whole town just makes all the sense in the world. But I just want to throw in there, you have to understand that with the ordinance change from the DEP, it brought together the Uniform Construction Code, as well as what we're doing, to accommodate FEMA and, compliance. And I mean, they've come together, which I think is a wonderful thing. And, that's what's crafted the program that we have now, is because it feeds from those two sources.
Great. All right. We're going to take our first break. We'll have plenty more here on Tidal Flooding. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more. So Kathy, so you guys Highlands was a class 7 at that point.
It was a long time ago. It was 30 years ago. It was in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm just
the
saying.
first hazard mitigation plan the town had.
Yeah.
We raised the first houses in New Jersey, secured money from the state, and put together some regional contribution agreement funding from Middletown, and we were able to do 6 $30,000 lifts, and it was at no cost to 6 of the homeowners.
Yeah, it's okay. Good, cool.
And then it went on its own.
Nice. Okay. All right. Palma.
Okay,
I forgot Palma. I actually had a PSA. We'll do it maybe next time. I actually made a PSA commercial like 6 months ago.
Oh.
I forgot I did it. I was looking through my files today. I'm like, what is this? It was about base flood elevation. But anyway, it's not as good as your readout, so I'll let you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Whatever you're ready.
Okay. All right, I'm ready.
Go for it.
Hello, welcome back. You are watching Tidal Flooding Talk, and we are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. We would like to remind our viewers to check before you build or renovate. Before starting any construction or renovations, contact your local building department to find out if permits are required. Floodplain development regulations are in place to protect your home and community. Work done without proper permits can lead to fines or worse, increased flood risk.
Awesome. And we are back here. We're going to talk about, let's start off with this. You are members of the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, and we love all of our town members that we have. What made you join the coalition, and what have you found, valuable from being a part of the Coastal Coalition?
Well, certainly, our entire goal here, since adopting the new 2022 DEP model ordinance in the flood zone, is to make us more resilient, and any tool that we could have in our toolbox to help us get that done was the main reason why we joined. We have our main street that runs through downtown Highlands is in the flood zone. It's in an area of redevelopment. There are 151 parcels that line this street that can be used for mixed-use development in town, but we have to be building resiliently, smartly, to coin a new word.
Yeah, I like that word.
But and we have to always be keeping safety top of mind. There are people that have moved here from the boroughs or from New York or North Jersey, and they don't know what Sandy was. They don't know that Sandy was I'm 5'3", and Sandy was a foot on top of my head, standing on Bay Avenue.
Right.
They can't fathom that amount of water, and so that's why there needs to be this constant reminder. As years go on and people start forgetting, we just have to be vigilant and make sure that people understand exactly what it is. People love to live by the water, but there's a risk if you don't respect the water.
Do you think that there's any actions that your residents themselves can take to help, resiliency in your community, or even to help towards CRS points?
A great number of the folk, that people that live here, both during Sandy and immediately after Sandy, they didn't wait for grants. They didn't wait for help, such as the help that Kathy provided back 30 years ago. They just knew that they had to lift their houses, and they did it organically by themselves without assistance. So that in itself is really the driver for how we can accumulate more points to get a better rating, because so many homes are already lifted.
Tell us about, I mean, we know, that, FEMA has undergone, changes mainly in the downsizing, side of things. How does that impact, your process in getting, being part of the community rating system and getting those discounts for our homeowners?
I'm going to start that conversation. I'm going to let Kathy finish it.
Okay.
Only because FEMA is, I mean, just today they announced that they're going to bring back the BRIC program, the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, when it was taken away a few months ago, but now it's back. So we're pretty much concentrating on working with DEP and state and county governments until we can get this sorted out of how this path is going to move forward.
And, I think the most important and far-reaching position that we're in is with the Bay Avenue redevelopment area. We have created design guidelines to show investors what elevated mixed-use structures look like that are flood compliant. There's not a lot to look at in New Jersey as far as samples. There's not a lot of architects that have, a lot of experience in it. So we're really forging this new concept drawing. Obviously, they're just concepts, but trying to use the space below the building on piers so that there could be parking underneath, and really open space and both a promenade where it could be used. It's definitely a town that's got a lot of restaurants, transient docks, so there's a tremendous amount of events. So I mean, it creates a promenade area under the building because we have 2-foot sidewalks, so they're not conducive like some towns that have large promenade areas. But additionally, when we crafted our permitting process, some of the very large towns, they look at, setting aside land so that it can't be developed. Highlands is very dense. It's relatively compact and small. We're faced with steep slope on our beautiful bluffs up by Twin Lights, the state historic site, as well as a floodplain with 1,502 properties in it. So we've got a double-edged sword. So when we developed our permitting strategy, the biggest thing we could do is monitor substantial improvement. I'm not talking about substantial damage that happens during a storm, but substantial improvement so that we can ensure that, if you're putting an addition on your house, you've got to be at the right elevation. If you're going to meet that 50% rule, you need to do it compliant. So monitoring that is going to assist us to get the CRS status, because we're pushed to eliminate the several hundred violations that we have, as far as properties. So it's a multifaceted approach between, monitoring the substantial improvement, trying to, forge the way for new investment that's resilient and compliant.
And as someone with experience working in a building department myself, I would have to agree with you that, Mayor, you were saying that, there's some people that weren't even around for Sandy, so they're not familiar with it. So we still have people that call and don't really have any background knowledge of the 50% rule. So, Kathy, do you think you can explain just a summary of what this 50% rule really means for people in your town?
Well, we've had several education sessions with our real estate people and our residents. We just had one on the 19th of March. The meeting is on YouTube for anybody to look at. But we're educating them, as far as our Forerunner public platform. You can go on there, you can see your site-specific elevation. Additionally, for many of the properties, we have their substantial improvement calculation, which goes back 10 years. So we work on that every day. Every time somebody comes in, if there's a Oprah inquiry, we go back the 10 years just to ensure if somebody comes in for a big project, you're going to check it right away. So, it's an ongoing process, and, having Forerunner to be able to do reports. I do my a 2-month CRS report through Forerunner. I've got a compliance pipeline. I've got houses that are, in the middle of elevation or new construction, and this way, we can pull all our data together. We've been ready for a CRS cab visit since June of 2024. So we have been ready. We've met with Monmouth County, and we just don't have any feedback as far as when the consulting teams, whether they change or whoever they are, might be coming. So as I said, we've been ready, and we just continue to forge ahead, with additional, levels of either educational material or improvements. We go to the Clam Festival, very large event here in Highlands. I work it the 3 days, I've got my computer, I can educate people on it. It's getting the word out.
Yep. Well, we're going to hope they come soon, right? We'll start knocking on their door. But we're going to take one more break here, and then we'll come on back with our last segment on Tidal. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more. And we are back here. We are talking Highlands. We are talking community rating system. We are talking all things about coastal resiliency. Kathy, this question's for you. When FEMA comes and that cab visit is when you can get get into this CRS program, do you have an expectation about what kind of rating and discount you'll get off the bat?
Well, we collectively reviewed with Monmouth County our ratings. I mean, all the documentation, and we anticipate, at minimum, we'll get certified, but it's hard to know. Certain elements are changing. I mean, we're pulling together new stormwater information. I mean, all of that counts, and so we're just constantly pulling together new information. And, since we're rating so long, we've removed things from the National Violation Tracker list. We've, got some totally compliant buildings. And I think the more important thing, from my perspective, is the fact that we have a process that we look at everything. I mean, nobody can expect anyone to walk on water here. If a homeowner is stopping and, you've got to roll with that. But just having a thorough process, I think, is the name of the game, and that's where most towns, I think, get challenged by it. You think you can come in and maybe just do a power surge, and it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I think Palma would understand that. It just doesn't.
Absolutely.
Right. There is a lot of work that is involved in not only becoming certified, but then maintaining that certification is constant. There is no, oh, we'll look into that in a few months. It's every day it goes with the whole permitting process has to continue in order to keep that certification. Now, I wasn't part of CRS 30 years ago, so what was the biggest change that you noticed, Kathy, besides, of course, having Forerunner available and things like that, but in terms of the regulations and what you have to do to be certified, was there a significant change?
Well, I think the level of complexity probably tenfold changed. At the time, I was, managing a downtown and a residential neighborhood, and the Department of Community Affairs said, "What are you doing about the flooding?" And I said, "Well, it's not in my work plan." And they said, "Well, you've got to do something because of the town." So I was able to work with, he's long retired, but, Anthony Mangieri, with the DEP, and, I was able to write a hazard mitigation plan. Highlands never had one. Able to put, a whole plan together with the community rating system, which they looked at immediately and granted us the status. I mean, there is no immediate right now. 28-page readiness report, that you prepare, pulling all your ordinances and all your permitting, demonstrated programs, and, you wait for them to come. The dynamic thing, of course, is not having, 26 spreadsheets, but, actually being able to manipulate the data, produce reports, produce logs, tie everything back, pull streets together on a map with GIS. I mean, it's just the difference between night and day.
Sure. And, Mayor, from your perspective, being the mayor, talking with constituents, voters, everything like that, what's your communication with them about CRS program, both in terms of, educating about CRS and then saying, hey, this is going to be a good thing for the town. We're just waiting for this to happen.
Exactly. A lot of this education process, as I mentioned before, was people that never had a flood, never heard of a flood, never, don't have any idea of how to react in that time. And they come here and they buy a house and they go, wait, I have to lift it? It's like, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
And that, again, goes back to the whole 50%, where you either have to lift it or it needs to be dry flood proofed. And people don't understand that it's not the total value, it's just the improvement. So it's just your physical house. It has nothing to do with the rest of, your land value or anything. But once that clicks, then they better understand the process. And
Now,
there's some value in lifting.
Mayor, how often is flood resiliency brought up in your world? Like, is it a priority, top 5 priorities for your town?
100%. We have more junior engineers living in this town because to live here, you have to know how we flood, because we flood from the inside out, not from the outside in. So the properties that are closest to the water are often at a much higher elevation than the middle of downtown. So it's more about making sure our outfalls are, have the proper either inline check valves, any type of valve that we can get onto our outfalls is very vitally important. And we're going through a program now that we started where we're going to get to probably 6 or so outfalls a year. That way we know what it is to budget for them. They're all different sizes, of course, because nothing could be easy. But, and it takes, a very dedicated outfit to do it properly, because they have different measurements for inside versus outside. And some are on corrugated, some are concrete, some are metal. It runs the gambit.
Got it. All right. Well, excellent conversation here. We wish you the best of luck, with your CRS journey. We'll obviously be here with you as much as you need at the Coastal Coalition. We're going to wrap up with the one thing we do every week, which is our one thing we can't stop talking about, tidal flooding or otherwise. It's sports, so I'll do sports this time because someone tweeted something the other day, and I was like, you know what, you're right. Which is, MLB. So opening day, right? We had the night game on that Wednesday night, but I really feel like it needs to be a day game. It just feels like baseball. Day game, 1 o'clock game, outside, little chill in the air, of things like that. Having it at night just doesn't seem right. Baseball's like I would even say football feels more like a night sport to me than baseball does. I just think baseball's got to be outside. It's got to be during the day on opening day. Have all the teams go, and that's what I got. I'm an Orioles fan. I feel like we should have done a much better job with our pitching this offseason. Or we did a lot with our hitting. That's good, but I just get worried about our starting pitching. But I'll hope for the best. So that's what I got, Palma, for my one thing.
Well, my one thing is, Easter Bunny came, got lots of goodies.
Mm-hmm.
For baseball, Joe, I would say just be careful where you pick your seat if you do go to a day game, because I've been like directly in the sun at a game before, and it was not the best. I actually ended up buying a hat, so.
And that hat probably wasn't $7 either.
No, it was like probably close to 30, but whatever.
Sounds about right.
Part of the experience.
The Jersey Shore Blue Claws are going to be called the Jersey Tomatoes for one game, or you think a series there? We could turn into tomatoes by getting burned down in the sun. It might play off if they have a day game there. Anyway, Mayor, we'll go to you. What's on your mind, tidal flooding or otherwise?
Well, I know you opened up with baseball, but
yes,
we're in the middle of March Madness, and we got to stick with the basketball for now.
Okay, all right, that's fine. We'll see how our brackets do after the final round. Kathy, are you a baseball fan, Kathy? I don't know.
Not really.
Okay.
I have to say I'm somewhat obsessive. We just had a meeting about the real rules, so
okay,
that's what's been on my mind.
Okay.
We've got it, on the web pages, and it's affecting, the redevelopment concept drawing. So this is all very important, consuming my everything. No time for baseball, no time for basketball.
You're dedicated
all work
to the...
and no play.
That's right.
And guess what? I've been like that forever, so.
And that's why we appreciate you, Kathy. That's why we appreciate you. So great. We'll wrap up. How can we follow more about, what Highlands is doing with coastal resiliency?
Oh, our website is loaded with goodies. We record all of our meetings and put them on our YouTube channel. So if you just check out highlandsnj.gov, you'll find a treasure trove of information all about everything you'd ever want to know and forgot about flooding.
I like that. Awesome. Well, Mayor, Kathy, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it. We'll look forward to having you guys again, and thanks so much for being part of the Coastal Coalition.
Thank you.
Thank you.